Hello, parents and teachers who may be watching. Welcome to Creating Math Ahas for Parents. I'm Dr. Sandy Atkins, Sandy. And first of all, I'd like to thank all of you who have subscribed to the channel. That's easy for me to say, isn't it? All of you who have subscribed to the channel. I really do appreciate it. It will help the channel grow, as well as you sharing the videos with others who you think might find these useful. So I want to thank you all, first of all, up front. That's great. Also, if you do subscribe, click on that notifications bell so that you'll know when other videos become available. Now, in this video, I'd like to continue our look at decimal fractions. And in the last video, the one that looks at creating decimal fractions, I give more of an explanation of why that term decimal fraction versus common fraction. But we want to keep in mind that decimals are fractions. They are fractions with denominators that are powers of 10, tenths, hundredths, thousandths. In that video, we looked at different models we use. One that can connect, those that connect to the common fraction models that your children have used, getting them used to recording and naming things with common fractions and with decimal fractions, but also making sure that we preserve the correct way of reading the fraction. So I can read 3/10, and when I see the decimal fraction, 0.3, I don't turn and start using 0.3. I still will name it 3/10. That's very important to help your child make the connections to place value and what's happening to the right of the decimal point. Okay? We looked at shifting that whole from more of that strip model like they did when they made fraction kits to one that's a square, right? An equilateral rectangle. And by the way, it's important that your children understand that squares are rectangles. They just happen to have equal sides. Now, we also looked at ways to make the connection between that common fraction, 5/10, and then linking over to the hundredths. And it's not just tacking a zero on the end. It's actually seeing that if I slide over the 5/10 piece, it right overlays on that section that shows 50 hundredths. So I can make that connection, that your child understands that 5/10 is equivalent to 50 hundredths, shades in the same size pieces, but we use smaller pieces to make that equivalent amount. So it's not that it doesn't matter. It does, because it changes the size of the pieces we use. So we've looked at all of that in creating a decimal fractions video. I'll leave the link below in the comments so you can connect to that. I'll also leave the playlist for all of these videos on fractions and decimals that I've put on the site. Now, as we're continuing to look at this, see, one of the problems and challenges is, what do you do when you start to look at repeating decimals? And how do you build that understanding? Because remember, when it comes to those 5 strands of math proficiency, procedural fluency, understanding those rules and procedures is one, but we've talked about it being procedural flexibility. That's important. But conceptual understanding is one. For your child to excel in math, to be proficient, they need to not just, they need to know the procedures, but they need to also understand the concepts. So I'd like to share with you a way to build that understanding of 1/3, the repeating decimals. So we can start with our whole, the one that you've already seen in this video and in others, a 10 by 10 grid. And my directions to your children would typically be separate into 3 equal sections. Okay, and you're going to use whole squares. We don't want them cutting apart the square at this point. That's going to be purposeful. When they cut it into 3 equal sections, you might see them shading it differently, but they'll end up with 33 hundredths in each section. They're going to have that one left over. So we've got 33 hundredths, that 0.33, but that's not quite. That's an approximation. We're almost there. But we have that one square left over. What are we going to do with that? Well, picture that being cut up in a 10 by 10. Now, think for a minute what size those little square pieces would be. See, I could put them right into there, or if I put it down in that corner or up at the top, it doesn't matter. Those are now 10,000ths pieces. So if I look at that, let's go back here. See, if I do the same activity, shading those in 3 equal ways, I get the next two threes. I now have 3,333 10,000ths. Okay, so you picture that's a 10 by 10 and it now has that cut in. But just like before, I'm going to have a little piece left over. And now again, we're going to cut that into 10 by 10. And those, right, you've got tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 10,000ths, 100,000ths, those size pieces are now millionths. And your children start to see that every time they separate these, no matter how small we get, into 3 equal pieces, there's always going to be one left over. So you get that repeating. So 1/3 is equivalent to that 0.3, 0.33 repeating. Okay, we have that repeating decimal. Now, that bar above the threes, I could have put it above a single three, 2 3s, 3 3. It won't really matter. It's just going to show that bar shows that we are repeating. Now, if I understand that about 1/3, what about 2/3? See, we want your child to understand that 2/3 happens to be double 1/3, right? So if I know 1/3 is this 3300ths repeating, then what's 2/3? Well, I double the 1/3. So I'm doubling that repeating. So you see that 2/3 is going to be that 0.6 repeating. Okay, it's going to continue on. So we've got repeating decimals, fractions that end up with that repeating occurring. And you'll see quite often 2/3 is approximately 6700ths. 1/3 is approximately 3300ths. And you often see this when you start to work with percentages. But you'll also see it written as 33 1/3% or 66 2/3%, right? They leave that portion that keeps repeating. That's going to give you your most precise answer. So we want to think about not just the mechanics of getting answers, but understanding what's going on and thinking of models of what's going on to help your children understand the why and start to look at patterns. And we've talked about the importance of always looking for patterns when they're doing math, starting to make predictions and see if that's going to occur. That's the activity of being a mathematician. And we want to do it with something even like repeating decimals, the 1/3 and 2/3. I hope this helped give you a model, an idea of how we build understanding. That when we're using these pictures and these models, it's not to, I guess, think that your child can't do the mechanics of the procedures. They can, but they need to also understand what it may look like, the conceptual side. These pictures help a great deal to build the concepts. It also helps children who struggle with all the mechanics of computation see what's going on and understand the patterns. It helps create those aha moments, those light bulbs going off in their heads. And that's what we're really hoping to do, to help your children become mathematically proficient, to excel at mathematics. I hope this helped. If you would, again, please consider sharing it with others. Give it a thumbs up. Please consider subscribing to the channel. Again, it really will help out. And thanks so much for watching.